Alrighty, welcome to this webinar about consistent wins in sales with me, Fredrik Malmsten.
Hi, my name is Anton.
And we will guide you through this session together. I'm really happy that you're all joining us here. And of course, during this webinar, if you have any questions or anything that you would like to bring up, you're very welcome to write in the chat, and we will take care of that. Overall, this is the agenda for this meeting. We will briefly talk about the main problems in sales, understanding the importance of consistency in sales, strategies for improving sales execution, and then tools and technologies for revolutionizing the sales approach. But let's start introducing yourself. Anton, would you like to say a few words about yourself?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. Nice for you to join. And thank you, Fredrik, for inviting me. It's pretty cool to be part of the webinar. My name is Anton Dobrzhanskiy. People typically can't pronounce my surname, leave alone write it. But my background is in sales. I've been in B2B enterprise sales for about 7 years now. Nowadays, I'm a co-founder of a startup here in Helsinki called Epicbrief. What we do is we help salespeople save time in their day-to-day activities and help organizations get information from the field by means of updating your CRM, whether it's HubSpot or Salesforce, making sure that information from your sales meetings end up in your CRM and you can analyze and make decisions based on that data. Thanks for having me.
Thanks. And we will go a little bit more into Epicbrief. And actually, Epicbrief is joining this session as well. If you can see, they're in the participation list. So really happy, Anton, to see you. I've known Anton for a while, also known the other founder in Epicbrief, Miro, for quite a few years as well. So really happy that we can discuss this together. And of course, if you are on LinkedIn, most of you probably know Anton already. He's one of the sales influencers. Been doing quite amazing work there. So please check us in, check us out afterwards, and let's continue the discussion. If I a little bit talk about myself, I'm Fredrik Malmsten. I'm from Sweden, but I have been living in Finland for about 2.5 years. I've been working with different things, business development, management consulting. Also been doing some sales, and I've been working as a sales manager at Seidat for about a year, and I'm really excited about that. Also, one of the reasons coming to Finland is that I took a master's degree in business at Hanken, but also that my wife is Finnish, and I guess that was that the reason you came to Finland, or?
No, my reason of coming to Finland is a bit different. I used to be a professional swimmer. I was in the Russian national team, and I came to Finland. I came actually to Jyväskylä for the first. I was living in Moscow, and then I moved to Jyväskylä to come train with Marko Mall, who was the coach at the time. And then I just stayed here. My whole family moved as well, so I've been here for about 16 years now.
Right.
But good that this webinar is in English, so I wouldn't know most of the words. Like your title would be myyntipäällikkö.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I was joking with Anton now. Let's do this in Finnish. But Anton speaks so much better than me, so I would have lost that game. Alrighty. Starting off with the first topic, it's about the main problems in sales. The first one, this is quite interesting. We were looking through some data about how are actually companies doing in sales overall. And we found that 91% of sales companies failed to reach their sales quotas in 2023. And here are some of the reasons for this. And would you like to, share anything here that you think that stands out to you? Why do you think companies are not reaching the goals that they have?
It's a good question. I think a lot of I would start at the bottom. If you look at the graph, the 31% on the right-hand side is talking about unrealistic quota or sales goals. I think one of the things which companies often get wrong is how do they set their targets. If you ever worked in a larger organization or even mid-sized organization, you'd imagine as a salesperson that there is some data behind the fact that you have a quota of 800,000 years, this year, for example. But typically, if you ask people why, like what was it based on, then it will be like, oh, but we have a company goal. It's like one, or it's 10, 15, 20 million, whatever the size of the company is. And then we just decided that we want to achieve 20 million. We divide it by the number of reps, and then pretty much this is how the quota. And so it's not very data driven. So I think that's where a lot of people get, and then you start working upwards, right? So like if you look at the slide a little bit other way around, not from the top down, but from the bottom up. So imagine like a company is setting unrealistic quota based on just gut feeling or some external number we want to achieve. Then obviously that impacts your motivation, right? If your quota is not very data driven, then probably your sales process is also not very structured. So you kind of have a bunch of cowboys and cowgirls running around and trying to shoot things. Somebody comes with a whale, somebody comes with a rabbit, but everybody is sort of like in this wild west. And then you're going still up like new hire ramp up period. So you don't have a defined sales process. Your sales team, the successful ones have motivation because they're getting paid, but then the non-successful ones are kind of not really helping new ramps. So you're having all this also retention issues. And then people end up being, if you're not motivated, you're not managing your time well, you don't have a structured approach, you don't do your activities in terms of, how you approach the market and your client relationships and your sales process are not aligned. And then all of that is, you might have 20% of the sales force who is like quite experienced and skillful, but then 80% of your sales force are kind of, they always need help. And I guess everything of that in 2023 kind of wrapped up in the market conditions. Right. So that's how I would summarize this graph.
And something I think is really interesting. Looking at these numbers, the first one, market condition, I would say, that is the only thing here that actually the salespeople cannot control. We cannot control that there are difficulties in the market. Some companies are not selling as much, and of course a lot of bankruptcies as well. And there are many things affecting the market conditions, but that is not something that the salespeople themselves can actually adjust. But I would say, other than this, the other ones here: lack of experience or skill, misaligned sales activities, poor time management, new hire ramp-up periods, unstructured sales process, lack of motivation, and unrealistic quota. Those are things that you can actually control internally. Would you like to add anything before we kind of go to our next topic here for this one?
No, I think it's a big number. That's what I would say. Like just imagine, like 9 out of 10 companies did not hit their quota in 2023. That's quite a lot. Like regardless of whether it was even realistic or unrealistic quotas, it's quite a big number. A lot of people, like a lot of decisions in the company are made with this in mind. So if you don't hit quota, that kicks off a lot of decision making. We saw a lot of layoffs. We saw a lot of reorganizations in at least here in the Nordics.
Right.
I've heard. So that's quite a big kind of number for just to even look at. Like 91%, that's a lot.
Yeah, and I think, I don't know, Anton, what are your experience about this and what are your thoughts? But usually it is the top. It comes from the top, and they say, okay, our investors, they really want us to grow, and they just set like a goal that is so misplaced that nobody really believes in it. And what are your thoughts there, Anton? Should sales organizations, should they involve the salespeople in creating the goals, or should it be more top down or a mix? What are your thoughts regarding that?
I think it's on leadership, on sales leadership. So the way there's a strong sales leader, they need to be the ones who negotiate the sales quota for their salespeople, because salespeople typically come to work for a sales leader, and if a company, if the rest of the management team says, for example, like, if you look at a publicly listed companies, right, then it's a bit more complicated. But if you look at the medium-sized sort of scale-up startup type of companies, then your quotas or your goals are largely defined by what does your next investors, if you're a venture back, like what are your next investors, what would they like to see for you to comfortably raise another round? Or so that's it. That is the starting point. And then when this goal comes down to to a sales leader and they have a discussion, a sales leader needs to have a set of tools and set of and it's just maths, really. It's just mathematics. All you have to do is to work backwards from that goal, taking into account your sales cycle length, your average contract value, take into account how many salespeople you have, and then present it back to the board saying, okay, if you want us to achieve 100 million in revenue this year, I need this many salespeople. Let's say I need 20 more salespeople in order for us to achieve that goal. It's very simple. And then that becomes a bit of a negotiation where people would say, well, but you don't, we didn't budget it for, but you want that goal. So you start that negotiation, making sure that your team, your salespeople are protected. If they overachieve the target, is much better than you have unrealistic expectations and they don't achieve that. Sure, you need a bit of a stretch goal to motivate people, but typically, but you have to be able to justify and to negotiate with the rest of the executive team on what the goal is and how realistic it is, and for that you need a set of tools.
Yeah, and thank you for bringing it up. We actually got one question here. That was a question regarding the sources. So the first one is from QuotaPath. That's the source from this one, and actually going into the next one. So now we have talked about most of the companies, they're actually not reaching their sales goals, and another reason, which wasn't really defined in this one, is that about 90% of people in sales experience sales burnout. And I don't know if, Anton, I shared this on LinkedIn yesterday. I think it's quite funny. So telling people you work in sales versus you while actually working in sales. I think most salespeople can recognize themselves. And it can even change in a day. You feel like you're the king, you've closed a deal, but then the day after something happens, maybe you have 5 meetings booked and all of them are rescheduled or canceled, and then it's up and down. Where have you seen yourself in both these, Anton?
Yeah, I think.
Or you're mainly the guy standing upwards?
No, I think it's a roller coaster, especially when, my role is, I'm doing sales, selling Epicbrief to the world, but I'm also, a founder. So I would say the coming from top to down and from down to top is like every 15 minutes. I haven't looked at my phone for the past, I think, 15 minutes. And if I open it up, I'll probably within 5 minutes, I go up and down, up and down, up and down. But in sales, typically, like, it's one of those professions where the feedback loop is really fast. So, and it's a very objective, right? Like, in the sense that another person who you're trying to sell your product or service is evaluating you, not only the product, but they also evaluate you as a salesperson. Because nobody wants to buy from a salesperson who is unorganized or is really slow to respond, or not being professional, or not answering the questions, and not being helpful in any way. So they as much as they evaluate your product or service, they also evaluate you as a salesperson, and that's why every single time you lose the deal, you also get that personal kind of feeling that it was your fault. Because in many ways it's part of that. So you haven't done something right, or you've missed something, or you dropped the ball somewhere. So I think that's why it's like you're either the winner or you're a loser. and the feeling, and in this image, the feeling is incorporated. You actually feel like you've lost, and you feel that, you're almost like, I should have done better, and then you start analyzing and thinking about the deal and all the stuff. So I think this is a very good picture.
Yeah, I can really also I can feel myself also watching that photo. But I think overall, salespeople take it a lot personal, I would say. I'm not selling, which means that maybe I'm not a good enough person. I'm not worthy of all the things that I have. I think a lot of salespeople, they get a lot of rejections. We need to remember that. It's one of those jobs where sometimes, salespeople don't always get the best response from people. So I would say, like, there are, of course, many reasons for sales burnout, and we need to be kind. So if you are a C-level executive joining this meeting, if you want to cancel a meeting with somebody, instead of just like cancel it like the same minute as the meeting start or not showing up, it's actually quite nice if you send an email and explaining, okay, you can say, I'm not able to attend this meeting. We have other things right now, but I'm really grateful that you actually booked this meeting. So I think you can still, we can do things in different ways. Not trying to make the burden a bit easier for the salespeople. So looking at this list here just quickly from Gartner, and you can look it up afterwards. There are a few reasons here that salespeople are actually feeling burned out at work. We have lack of development opportunities, feeling like a cog in a machine, lack of clear manager feedback, and high burden of non-value administrative tasks, such as seeking multiple approvals of sales. What would you like to kind of those 4 things there, Anton? Which of those would you like to kind of discuss more, or what's your reaction when seeing that?
I think the first reaction is, I would imagine that more of those bullet points would relate to a relationship of a salesperson between a potential client or their client, so a bit more external, since what Fredrik, you said, is that people get a lot of rejections, you're not closing deals, etc., etc. But looking at these 4 bullet points, it's quite interesting to see that they're mostly internal, or actually all of them are internal. So it feels like 90% of salespeople burn out because they don't like the place they work for. That's pretty much how it feels like lack of development opportunities. Very clear. It means like, okay, am I going to be an individual contributor, or am I going to be in the mid-market space? I want to go to the enterprise, but what do I need to do? So a lot of companies don't actually have a defined separation between, what do you need to do in order to grow as a salesperson inside of the organization. A lot of the past would be like to become a manager, but then how do I make the leap between a mid-market to an enterprise salesperson? That's very unclear in a lot of organizations, and it's not an easy thing to define, since it's almost like when you have an enterprise salesperson, the way they're selling and the conversations they have or they're supposed to have are kind of different than what, like, if you're selling a 1 million deals or contracts versus you're selling 10,000 years contracts. That's a little bit of a different kind of game. So typically it comes with experience, for example. Since if you sold for 15 years, $1 million contract, kind of, it's just a number. It's the same as 10,000, but it's just a bigger number. So you start thinking about that.
And something I would like to add here, lack of development opportunities, because obviously there are salespeople that are unhappy in their organizations. They're maybe not reaching their goals. There might be other things as well, as we have been discussing. But I think it's also important as a manager to take those concerns or take those feelings seriously, and maybe see if there are ways that they can help those salespeople. Maybe they don't have their own development plan. Maybe the manager doesn't follow up with the salesperson regarding their goals and how he can help him on the way. So I think there are different ways to go around that one. what would you say, Anton? You're working in a startup. I'm also working in a startup. You know, the decision making can be quite fast, and the feedback can be also quite fast. Working in a smaller organization, what would be your do you have any suggestions for people working in bigger organizations, maybe having a bigger sales team to take care of, while you also have many other things to focus on?
Yeah, I think decision making inside of a kind of larger company with larger sales team, like it ultimately, like if you think about making how people make decisions, is if you have all information in the world, so you know exactly the pros, cons, and what are the what is the decision you need to make, you will make that decision really, really quickly because there's nothing stopping you from making the decision. But then in a lot of companies, the root cause for slow, kind of rigorous decision making is because there's not enough information available. So to give you an example, I used to work at Oracle, and we'd need to go through like if you go above a certain percentage level of discounts, you need to go through a set of approval process. But then the approval process typically has a very defined set of criteria which would allow you to get that additional approval, right? And then as a salesperson, what you typically need to do is to provide that information to the rest of the organization, right? Justifying, let's say, instead of 5% discount, justifying a 10% discount, right? So, but quite often, you as a salesperson, you don't really provide a very reliable information for that because, and that's what other people always feel is like, but of course it's much easier to discount, so they don't really trust you. So you need to be able to provide more information for people to make that decision quicker. And that's what I typically find is if you're able to have more information and give access to that information as a salesperson to management or executive team, typically decision making even in a larger organization is going to be faster. So that would be my advice: is try to give as much real, reliable information to the people who need to make decisions, and then I think that will be improved.
Yeah, thank you so much. And before we go to the next topic, just taking this last bullet point, high burden of non-value added administrative tasks. And I think that is also an issue for salespeople today, that so much time is put into the administrative stuff that actually are not leading to direct sales instead of doing actual sales. So that is something that we will discuss today, how Epicbrief can save a lot of time in the sales process. But also for me, working in Seidat as a sales manager, that is also something that I have seen, that the importance of if you can automate tasks and focus on actually if you think about if you have good, better, and best activities, focus more on those that actually give the highest value and do more of that instead of doing a lot that are good things, but that might not bring the biggest value in your organization. And this kind of continues a little bit with our next topic. It's about the consistency of sales. One of those main things, Anton, is that people come underprepared for meetings. If you think about the sales process as, okay, we have, of course, before we have the first meeting, and then what happens, of course, then during the meeting and then after the meeting. First bullet point here, we come underprepared for meetings. What would you like to tell the people joining here how you can better prepare?
Yeah, I think if you work in a company, either you're maybe an executive or you're a salesperson, and you're doing a B2B sale, so you're selling product or service to other companies. One of the things which is pissing a lot of buyers off is when you clearly come to a meeting without any research done on who you're meeting with, and why would they be interested. So you might be it might be an inbound, so people book the meeting with you through your website, or you might have called somebody or send them an email. they schedule a meeting with you, the expectation from the people who are buying your service or evaluating the purchase is that you're going to come in with the research done and with the point of view. So it's almost like when you want to interact, it's like in the daily in everyday life. If you interact with a salesperson, let's say even in the shop, the expectation is that they will provide value to you and they will take care of you. But in a lot of sales meetings I would participate as an executive, is it almost feels that I'm leading the salesperson, helping them help me make a decision, right? So, but when you come prepared and you come with a point of view, your point of view might be wrong, or might be not completely accurate, but it gives a feeling to the buyer that you actually thought about them. You thought about how your solution or service or a product can benefit them. Why would it benefit them? And it's very personalized to their company and to their corporate objectives, strategies, initiative they might be having. And it opens up a very good conversation. Instead of you coming and asking, hey, what are your initiatives? Like a lot of on LinkedIn, a lot of people would give you like, hey, what are the questions you can ask? Like, what are your initiatives? You should come with a point of view saying, hey, I looked at the news, or I read your annual report. Seems like you're investing a lot in AI. It seems like the most of the opportunities, or still there are some initiatives in tax space for your company. But what about your marketing department? What kind of initiatives are you? What kind of use cases are you looking at? Right. So you've done the research, and then it immediately builds rapport between you and your buyer. But it takes a lot of time. So in order for you as a salesperson to really prepare for a meeting, it might take about 20 to 25 minutes. You visit everybody's LinkedIn profile, you go to a company's webpage, you read about news, you read about blogs. So you read a lot of information, then you try to form that point of view. It just takes a lot of time. So that's why I think a lot of salespeople come to meetings underprepared, because they just don't feel that they can allocate 25 minutes to a meeting where a CEO might cancel at the last minute.
And I think there as well, focus. Of course, you might have very busy schedule, having a lot of meetings during the day, and you might not be able to put half an hour or an hour. Of course, maybe an hour is a bit too much. Of course, if it's a huge deal, but I would say there as well, try to as Anton said, focus on the most important things. What's the revenue? How are they growing? Maybe have they downsized recently, or do they plan to hire more people? Have they recently hired new people? What are some of the things in the market overall that might affect them? So in that way, they actually feel like, wow, this person actually know about my company. They want to help me. And it's so much easier for you as a salesperson as well to help that customer if you understand them, at least a little bit. You don't need to, of course, understand everything. Something else here, when it talks about, we have now talked about preparing, but also navigating. Something that I have seen there as well is that salespeople, they put a lot of efforts into, of course, preparing for meetings, and that's really good. But also, the thing is that you never know beforehand what will be discussed in a meeting. You can prepare as much as you want, but also you need to be flexible when it comes to the meeting. For instance, a football coach, let's say they're having a game. In the first half, the other team might actually change their strategy completely. So if then that team would continue with their strategy, with their formations, maybe the other team would just easily win. And so in that way, I feel like the sales meeting, it should also be like a flexible one. Not, of course, that you don't have any agenda or things like that. But I think it's also very important to be flexible in the meeting and not kind of beforehand, as many do, that they have a agenda and then they have all the slides, and then they present that 45 minutes, and then they ask, okay, do you have any questions? And that is something that I will, in the end here, go through a little bit. Like, what are some ways that you can be flexible in the meetings using Seidat's tool? Would you like to add anything there before we go to the next question there, Anton?
Yeah, I think another. So I think we've talked about coming to like what we discussed now with you, Fredrik, is more about how to prepare, almost like for a first meeting,
Right.
Right. I think a lot of there's also a lot of inconsistency and a lot of mistakes salespeople do when they prepare for the next meeting as well.
Right.
Because imagine this, like you have met a person, they've shared a lot of information with you, and the way it works in B2B sales is that quite often, like it's almost like if you imagine driving a car, you want to get from point A to point B. You gas up at point A, and the gas is your first meeting. That's your tank. If you don't fill it up, you're not going to get to the destination, which is closing the sale, because in the next steps of the sales process, the buyers are not going to give you more information, or they start protecting more information, because you're going into negotiation further and further down the sales process. So if you don't get enough information in the beginning, and then you don't use that information for next meetings, the chances are you're just going to run out of gas before you can close the sale. So one of the things is obviously prepare for meetings, design and navigate those meetings as much as you can in order to get information, to understand more about about the needs, about the pain points, about the initiatives you might be working towards, and then use that information during the sales cycle to make sure that you can close the sale using that the information you gathered in the beginning.
Yeah, and also something I would say that can save you a lot of time, and I know Anton will discuss this more, but for instance, having somebody that takes notes for you in the meeting, that can save you a lot of time, but also it can help you to focus, because if you're writing at the same time as somebody speaking, everybody who has done interviews for thesis or whatever, if you're writing at the same time as you're interviewing somebody, the chances are that you will actually miss quite a lot of information, and you won't focus as much. So I would say also using a tool such as Epicbrief to make notes for you during the meeting. Of course, I would still say that do some notes yourself as well to keep track. But having that help, it can save you so much time, but also help you to get all the most important details after the meeting. Would you like to add something around that?
No, I think.
Do you also do notes yourself, or do you just allow your tool doing that for you?
I had a meeting where I thought that I don't know what happened to my brain, but I started making notes, and it was about 3 weeks ago, I think. And then I shared with my team. I'm like, hey, this is the notes I made, and then this is the output of Epicbrief. So people just started laughing. Like I was trying to make really good notes, and I made three lines, and then that's it. Like because you can't focus. Like we talked about how sales is high pressure. You're always on your toes. You're navigating the conversation. You're trying to understand what are the angles and how to help the customers, and also so you're doing a lot in your brain. So just taking notes in a process which is a complex conversation is very challenging. Like I sometimes, like the reason salespeople have slides is not to be able to show you stuff or show how beautiful slides they are, but because it's really hard to navigate. You always need some anchors, and that's also one of the ways. Like if you have to do multitask during the meeting, you're showing slides at the same time, you probably need to take notes, then you need to have a conversation. It's just too much, so you have to let something go. And I think one of the lowest hanging fruits is obviously making not spending time on taking notes, because as a human you can't even be close to the quality of the output you can get using tools like ours.
Right, and also I would say I like what Anton said, because you have the first meeting, right, and then it might take 2 weeks before the next meeting, or 3 weeks, or sometimes more than that. Hopefully you get it quite fast, but also like understanding what does the customer do in between meetings. I think that is also very important part of the sales process, and something that is very helpful for me. For instance, I'm working with a lot of meeting a lot of different people, sales directors, CEOs, etc. And the good thing, what I like about, for instance, our tool is that when I have had a meeting, I've sent the proposal, or if I've sent a specific presentation, I can actually track when that customer interacts with the material that I have. So that helps me as well to understand, okay, where is actually the customer going? Is he or she really engaged in the process, or do I need to kind of push them along? Should I send them emails, or should I text them, send text messages, or call them, or LinkedIn? Could you quickly say, what do you do between meetings? Like if you had a meeting, let's say you have a meeting in 2 weeks, do you try to chat with them, or do you call them up, or what do you do in between?
It's a good question. Unfortunately, I'm not using Seidat, but I think I would want to see how it works. What I do really is just sending a very good meeting recap, follow-up email, and I'm not focusing on things we discussed or like a conversation. I'm focusing more on what were the needs which a customer has shared with me. And I'm just clarifying that this is what I've understood, right? And giving them also that as an asset. I'm also making sure that there are things like, what are the next steps we agreed on, right. So everybody is aware of what we agreed. And then I might include some of the kind of custom things, like maybe there were some questions they asked, which I feel it's good to, because what happens with those emails, and this is crazy to see once we started selling, is you can't as a human write such a kind of not extensive but very high quality recap email, which literally captures everything, personalized what the customer has said. If you manage to send them your buyers it's almost like a business case. These are your needs. This is how we help you, and these are the next steps. People send that thing around their organization because the person you met is not going to make the decision themselves. So they will send that email, or they would share a Seidat page with the rest of the organization, but they will do that only if it's personalized and it's really customized to what the use case or what is the discussion you had, because nobody wants to share like a generic, really like email saying, like generic information. This is about Epicbrief. No, they want to see like this. What did we talk about? How does this tool or this service can help us? What we have agreed on, so that they can ask another person to look at that and help them evaluate it or give their input. So there is an activity, like there are activities you need to make, such as writing those things, sending a Seidat, tracking the data, but also the quality of the things you share with your customers, and the level of personalization and customization is extremely high, and the expectations are very high by the buyers. So you need to be able to meet those expectations.
Right, and going through to the next topic, so the time is flying, and of course, if you have anything you would like to add to this discussion, please let us know. Yes, continue then with the next topic. We have already gone through most of these things already, but when it comes to strategies for improving sales execution, we have both organizational and also things that the sales reps can do themselves. Would you like to start us off here with what are some of the strategies quickly that the organization should have, and also then we can kind of go into the sales rep as well.
Yeah, it's I think when you look at what's there in the organization, like standardizing your sales process, setting clear goals, making sure that you provide training for the sales for your sales organization. I think the missing piece in 90% of the companies, and 90% of the companies get this wrong, is that they just copycat something from somewhere. Like you, for example, you used to work at Workday, then you joined a small organization, and then you just bring that sales process, bring that goal setting, bring that training approach into that organization, the higher most of the cases, it just doesn't work. You cannot just copycat one product, service, and an organizational like process to another one. You need to understand how those things work, and then you also need information. So if you don't have enough information about the historical sales processes, or reason you're winning or reasons you're losing, where the customers are losing traction, what is the content you need to share with people at certain stages of the sales process. If you don't approach it in a data-driven, more scientific way, and if you don't have that data, you're not actively or proactively asking your organization to collect and share that information, most of the cases you're going to get it wrong, and you're playing just by luck, and then hoping that the product or your service is good enough for you to kind of get by or go through those stages. But in a world like we live now, in a world where there's more products and there's more services, and it's very hard to differentiate between them. Like for example, you can buy an ERP or HR tool from 15 or 100, or a sales tool you can buy from 50 different providers. But what is the difference? Quite often the difference is between the salesperson who is selling that tool, and that's what you make a decision on. And you need to be able to kind of enable your salespeople to be that competitive advantage to your organization. And some of the things like standardizing your process, setting clear goals, and coaching your salespeople is very important. But you do need information from the field, understanding what the customers are saying and what are they doing.
Yeah, and I think also something that I would like to add here. We have Anton has clearly been discussing this, but something I think what is really, really important is that if you have you need to first of all have a really a solid sales process, and if you have top salespeople selling, then try to do as much of that's possible. Because one of the main issues with SaaS sales or overall with sales is that just a few people, they sell like 80% of all the revenue in the company. As we read before, only 10% of companies actually reach their sales goals, so 90% fail. And I think in many cases is because they might not have a clear sales process. They might have some salespeople that are doing a super great job, and some other laggers that are not actually reaching their goals, but they're actually not getting that help that they need. But having a solid sales process based on, okay, what are actually the best practices in our organization that helps us close more deal, do more of that. And then I think also hopefully those sales teams can be more efficient. Yes.
Yeah, I think a lot of people might think that the sales process is your stages in your CRM. Like if you have HubSpot or Pipedrive or Salesforce, sales processes, what are they called, or how many stages they are. Our sales process is what you actually do,
right,
in every step of the way, in every interaction with the customer. And the only way of knowing that is actually doing that enough times so that you can learn from those attempts and then design the sales process.
Right. And then we have, of course, the sales rep. So the first ones are more like an organizational base, right? So the sales process standards, it's on the organization's table. The clear goals and training, those are the things that actually the salesperson itself cannot affect in that sense. Of course, they can be involved, but it's an organizational question. The next ones, they're actually things that the sales rep should and could do themselves. Activity and productivity, resilience and adaptability, relationship building and communication, continuous learning and development, and accountability and ownership. And I think there are many really interesting ones here. It's so easy for the salesperson to say, oh, I cannot sell because the market is so tough. They don't have money. But I think sometimes it's good to ask the question to yourself, okay, what can I do different as a salesperson? What can I learn? What are the bottlenecks for me actually reaching the goals that I have? I think it's very important as well, not just blaming, but also taking responsibility. Would you quickly like to add something here, Anton, before I quickly show Seidat?
Yeah, I think it sums it up pretty nicely. What my co-founder Mira taught me is the the way to evaluate yourself as a salesperson, or the way people would evaluate, in a larger company sales teams, is the best way is to look at almost like a graph, and looking at, okay, one graph is what is your sort of, there's skill and will. So will is determined by activity and productivity, and resilience and adaptability. So that basically making sure that you're putting in the work, you're not kind of slacking, you're doing your activities consistently, and then the rest is the skill. And where the company needs to start investing in the people the company needs to start investing are those who demonstrate high level of will, so that you can pull them with their skill. You can invest in their skill levels. But then if you have salespeople who have very high skill but have very low will, they're super inconsistent. So you might be they would achieve their quota in 1 year, and then for 3 years they're going to be in zero. And so you have to be able to. I think that's a good framework for everybody to take away, is look at the will, which is activity and productivity, and then make sure that you're helping salespeople on the skill level.
Yeah. And kind of summarizing here today what we have been discussing, there have been, of course, many different topics that we have discussed, but overall, we have talked about the main problems in sales, that many don't reach the sales quotas, but also there are a lot of people stressed in sales. Also, we have talked about understanding the importance of consistency in sales, strategies for improving sales execution, also tools and technologies for revolutionizing the sales process. I will quickly just mention that myself, I'm working at Seidat, which is a Finnish company based in Helsinki, and we provide a sales presentation tool to help the sales teams throughout the sales process. And I won't go too much into this, because hopefully you will book a meeting with Anton and I after this, and we can discuss more. But basically what you can do, you can create material, you can present, you can share them, you can analyze it, and then as well you can even sign the contracts directly using our tool. And I would say one of the main possibilities or things that help you as a salesperson is actually getting the analytics from the people you're visiting with. So after you've had a meeting, you can easily share the presentation, and then you will get a notification when they open it. You can also, when you connect it to your CRM, you can actually analyze what they are looking at as well in the presentation, in the proposals you're sending them. So it's a tool that can help you to save time. It can also help you to close more deals, which is obviously one of the main themes for this webinar, is how you can close more deals. And we would love to continue be in touch with you guys. So if you have your phone in front of you, please make sure to click in the QR code. Here's Anton's QR code and my QR code. And just to be aware, we will of course contact you as well afterwards. We have your details, so don't be surprised if you will get a phone call or email before quite soon. So yes, Anton, would you like to end with something before we finish this webinar?
Yeah, sure. Thank you very much for joining, people who joined live, and then people who watched the recording. I think one of the things I would want to put in your minds is, sure that there's tools we provide, one Epicbrief, one Seidat, but if you heard what Fredrik said, is one of the main features of Seidat, one of the most valuable kind of capabilities is your ability to analyze information. I think that if you look at the way people are changing their behaviors, and the companies changing their decision-making processes, people become much more data-driven.
Right.
So look at the tools, and it just happens so that data is as much as human problem, but it's also a tooling problem, because most of the data needs to be analyzed. It needs to be digitalized or stored somewhere.
Right.
So think of the ways, how can you support your decision making? How can you transform your decision making into more data driven, by using both behaviors and also tooling available on the market. And then I think that's going to be a good point of how you can improve your sales and then your operations overall.
Yeah, thank you so much. So if you want to increase your sales, make sure to use both Epicbrief and Seidat. And then things will work well. And also thank you so much for the comments. Nina wrote, "You are amazing, guys. Thanks a lot for the webinar, and please organize more." Thank you so much, Nina. Appreciate that. And please reach out to us afterwards as well. So with that, thank you so much.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
Bye.